What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to The Truth, where today we're going to be talking about on this first round of offseason coverages, we're going to be talking about the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints were a team last year who went 7-10 and went 9-8 this year. As you can clearly see, they're $15.5 million over the cap. We are not going to do a free agency for them until they get under the cap. Then we'll do a free agency. And I'm kind of thinking about doing an official first round mock draft. I might double upload. Actually, what I'll probably do is if I do decide to do a official first round mock draft, I'll do it with the first team starting the second round. So that's either the Cardinals or the Falcons. I don't remember. I'll do it with one of those teams, and then I'll talk about that team and go into depth about that draft and that team. And that's how I'll do it if I do decide to do that. I'm still on the fringe about that, but that could be something possibly cool for y'all to see coming later. But yes, so there's going to be no free agency for them. This is kind of a team who I expect by the time I come around for the second round, they will be under the cap. Maybe have signed a guy or two. As you can clearly see, they've done lots of restructurings and stuff like that and adding void years. Something they did do was cut their starting safety, Marcus May. Guy who kind of didn't get a lot of playing time just because of injuries. They decided to move on from him. So, nevertheless, getting into it, here's the draft I have for them. They have a first, a second, a couple fifths, and I think a sixth and a seventh or something along those lines. Getting into it with New Orleans, I know it says tackle. This is going to be a loose term because I've tried to do research on a lot of teams and I'm trying to listening around. I'm doing as much as I can. New Orleans were one of the things that I've kind of saw was like, hey, they like Trevor Penning. Their organization likes Trevor Penning. They want to make it work. So I was like, okay, how about we draft a tackle? And if whichever one, if Penning just doesn't work out in camp, you move him to guard, or if Penning does work out in camp, move JC Latham to guard. They need a starting guard. They need two starting guards. They need a guard and a backup on this roster. They need a guard. Like that is without a doubt. They will be getting a guard. They will be getting two guards one way or another. So, like I said before, they're gonna like JC Latham or any tackle really that they could potentially take in the first round. Penning or that tackle could be a guard. It's either or. I wouldn't be surprised which way they go. That is kind of what I'm thinking. But that's the kind of thought process I have right now. From what I'm hearing, from what I'm doing the research on, they like Penning. So JC Latham at guard. That left side, if they can get it to work, are going to be man movers. I mean, Penning and JC Latham are huge people. So they're going to move some people out the way. Like that is, if they can get that left side to work, this is going to be one of the better offensive lines. I know that's kind of the weird part is like New Orleans, it doesn't really have the craziest O-line. I'd say they have a decent O-line. They have like an average to maybe below average offensive line. If they could get that, if they pick up JC Latham and somehow figure out how to get that left side to work, yeah, it's going to be pretty nasty. With the next pick, I went safety. Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota, 6'1", almost 200 pounds. He has everything except for like the ideal athletic profile. Everything else, great in coverage, physical, able to adapt on the turn, can play zone, can play man, turnover machine, great in run support, play recognition, great tackler. He is an all-around safety. I know they did draft a safety last year, but they did lose a starting safety. This is to fill that position up, or maybe to compete. However they want to do it, whatever teams want to do. I always believe in adding players to help compete in positions. Always, that's where I think you should always with your third. And when you're going into it's my personal belief that when you're going into training camp, always have your third player at that position. Guy probably won't make the roster, or maybe will, depending on like if they shock you. I was like, hey, if you can bring in UDFA, maybe bring in a guy in the draft if you have it, and an extra amount of picks that you don't want to trade up with or trade back in the next years or whatever. Draft a guy or draft a UDFA. That way you can kind of create competition and always have guys fighting. Competition breeds greatness. So that's kind of my thought process. But kind of getting off my spiel, that's kind of what I'm thinking here. And with the last pick, same kind of thought. I know they did have a receiver at the end of the year kind of do well for them. But this is Javion Baker, receiver out of UCF, 6'1", 202. Look, a guy who can fight for the third string spot. Just a body there in general, so that way you can actually have a full roster there as well. Getting to the next pick, Curtis Jacobs, linebacker at Penn State, a guy I've talked about. He actually did pretty nice in the combine. RS score of 9.09, 6'1", 241. New Orleans is one of the teams who do need linebacker depth. They're also one of the teams who didn't lose a lot of starters. They do need a lot of linebacker depth, so this would be really nice for them to have. An big athletic linebacker that they can mold. Javion Cohen, guard, 6'4", 324. This is another player who's going to be their backup guard. He will kind of fit that mold. He is big enough to play tackle. You can slide him in that position, something New Orleans is a team who likes to do. It's just we haven't really seen it to the extent you want to see it. I'll say that. And then me addressing, because they do need a backup tackle, Garrett Greenfield, offensive tackle out of South Dakota, 6'5", 311, 8 RS score or a relative athletic score of 8.36. Like I said before, this is a big athletic tackle. It's a moldable piece. Look, if you're able to turn them into something, that's great. Now you have a great tackle. If not, whoop-de-doo. Oh, well, you have depth there. You have a very athletic tackle that you can build to be at least some decent depth if you can. With the next pick, I picked up Hunter. Not even going to try to pronounce his last name. Offensive center out of Penn State, 6'3", 317. This is going to be their backup center for them. He's going to provide nice depth. The way New Orleans does their center's depth is they have Eric McCoy as their center, Cesar Ruiz as their guard/second center, which is kind of rare for teams to do because that does shake up the line a lot when you do lose your starting center. But this is a guy who can be a starting center, or not starting center. This is a guy who can be a center for you right out the gate if you don't maybe want to move Cesar Ruiz. If you can kind of want to keep that cohesion and you think Hunter can provide close to enough similarities to Cesar or Cesar, something along those lines. Juwan Briggs, defensive tackle of Cincinnati. Last year they went really heavy on defensive tackle. This is just to round up that depth. They do lose a rotational depth player. Juwan Briggs, defensive tackle of Cincinnati, to kind of fill that hole. And with the last pick, I chose receiver. Joshua Cephas, wide receiver out of UTSA, 6'2", 188. My apologies, a little bit lighter, but he can also put on some weight. He is 6'2", so he is tall. This is a guy who's going to provide some depth for you. He can't compete, but this is a guy who will provide depth for you at the end of the day. Something that they need. The only thing, there is only one position I wasn't able to address, and that's cornerback. They do need to figure out what they're going to do at that position. I know this was a shorter video. I apologize. They really didn't have any news. The only big news that I could find was the fact that Tyrann Mathieu isn't restructuring his contract, but we're working it, which, that could mean a multitude of things. Maybe they're adding a void year. Maybe they're kind of taking some cap maneuvering it some way, or he's just taking a cap. He's just taking he's taking some money away from his contract so the team can do better. That's also a possibility. Usually when you restructure things, you're moving cap. When you're reworking things, you're either gaining cap or losing cap, or a team's either gaining cap or losing cap. Like there's only one or two. It usually doesn't stay the same. That'd be almost super rare because then you're just restructuring at the end of the day. But other than that, thank you all for watching. I will talk to y'all next time. See ya, and let me know what y'all think about the New Orleans Saints.